I'm back. Oh, what have you got this time? Well, we've got one of these bit rusty pod goes from Line 6. Now, I've used Line 6 equipment for some time, and I've always found it to be pretty good value actually. Yeah, for the most part. Well, what are we going to be covering in this review? Well, anybody that hasn't seen my reviews before will be going, oh my god, why is he doing all this stuff? Well, I'm going to take a look at inside the unit, the processors and among other things, the outside of the unit, the I/O and the switches and the rest of it, the software, the firmware, and we're even going to go and have a look at the control software for setting all this up and, you know, all that sort of thing, messing around basically. And then we're going to go and take it outside into a studio and have a play. And I bought some Jason Sadites presets from Line 6, and I'm going to plug them in and see what it sounds like. Well, better than that, you're going to see what it sounds like from a guy who's just bought them off there, put them in here, and the end result will come out in the music, or not. That doesn't mean Jason's presets are no good or anything like that, but what it does mean is that you'll probably have the same result. Now, this will probably be quite a long video for such a low-cost product. I mean, they're about £400 in England, and I think they're about 500 and something odd dollars in America. It's a long shout from the original pod, that red thing they had all them years ago, and I remember them well. Personally, I have to say this, I thought they were crap. Sorry, not very good. But things have changed with Line 6 since, well, in my opinion, since Yamaha took over, so to speak. What you've got today is a product that's great value. It sounds pretty cool. Well, I've already listened to it. It sounds pretty cool, and all the rest of it. And yeah, so no more ado. Let's get on. Have a look inside first of all. It's so exciting. Well, here we go. I mean, right from the off, I've got the forks fur out. Yeah, makes it look nice, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do is flip her over, undo the back, and we'll go from there. So don't you go anywhere. Let me go and open it up. Okay, well, I can guess this will be the first time you've ever seen inside one of these, a Line 6 Pod Go. And you've got 4 screws down there and the rest come off, but these little 4 feet that sit on the thing don't need to be undone, just in case you ever pull yours apart. So let me just flip the lid off, and there you go. Seems to be pretty safe over there. So here it is. Yeah, I want to go down and have a closer look at this bit down here. So hold on a moment. Basically, you've got just a few of these nuts to unscrew, and then this bird will flip up out of the way. So I'm going to go and do that so we can get down to the nitty gritty, or as near as I can get. Okay, let's get down to it as best we can. You can see the board flips up, and this is the I/O board, but more importantly than just the I/O board, it's actually got the SHARC processor underneath down there. Now, I don't know if you can see that. I'm just going to try and get a bit closer so you can get at least an idea of what's inside this unit. There it is, SHARC processor. It says on SHARC, analog devices. Notice there's only one of them in here, and there's another chip down to the right here, which looks a bit like, it's probably memory. I can't be sure, obviously. No, nobody tells me anything. I just look for the benefit of everyone else, really. So there's the board. All the I/O is on the same board, the same main board. Here's a quick look at the top of this board. All very well nice and nicely made, I must add. It's got the same old cheap capacitors that were in all the other pieces of gear out there, and it's probably got a very similar processor to the one out there that costs £2,500 and has got 2 in them. Oh no, they've moved on now, haven't they, to the cheaper processor. If you believe everything that people tell you about these things, this unit would have cost about £1,000. Clearly it hasn't. It's got an analog devices, cheap processor in there, which I'm sure they are these days, and they probably were before. You've got a couple of daughter boards down here, if you look really carefully, which are good, because if you get any failures on these, you can buy one of these boards. Well, I say you can buy one. Let's hope you can buy one of these, or they can fix it, because it's all surface mount stuff, all made on a computer, as this is, as everything else is. And what do you want for your £400 including tax, or your $560 give or take? There's no getting away from it, is there? Lastly, we've got over here, this is the volume or what, or call it whatever pedal you like, and you can see it connects onto the main board there. All very nicely made, highest quality. It's exactly what I'd expect from this particular company. Lower foot switchboard there, and upper foot switchboard there. What more can I say? Not a lot really. Let's have a look at the main board. Main board doesn't really have much on it by way of descriptions. Might be underneath, but I'm not going to mess around anymore. I'm just going to put this back together now. I just thought guys would really like to see what they're actually buying as opposed to what you think. But the good news is that everything inside this unit looks really pretty much spot on. Oh, and by the way, there is a screen. It's down underneath that board there, but I'm not going to pull that apart just for the sake of looking at a colour screen. Now, just before I do reassemble it, take note of this, because if you do pull it apart, these connectors, they're plastic, and I'll show you one on screen now. And it could be, it's not for me, but it could be for you, very easy to strip these as you're screwing them back in. They really are, well, pretty flimsy plastic, and that's one of the things you've just got to watch with them. They weren't very tight when I pulled them off, let's put it that way round. Okay, so believe it or not, it's back together. Yeah. Simple as that. And as they often say on these sort of things, yours should look the same by now. So where do we go from here? We go to, there's about 10 of these, and this one happens to be in English. Could be American, but it's probably American English. Anyway, you've got one side telling you all the bits and pieces, and the other side telling you the rest of the bits and pieces. So what we're going to do is have a quick look, as we always do, at the back of it, and yeah, then get on with it. Now, this is only going to be a quick run past because, well, let's face it, it's not rocket science. In fact, I'll come back to how easy this is to use later. Let's have a look at it. From the left hand side here, we've got the Line 6 POD GO, highlight up very nicely. We've got a guitar in. Simple, connect your guitar, bass or synth in there. You can take your pick on that. Well, next we've got this Expression 2, and it says foot switch 7 and 8. Now what that's about is you can have a second expression pedal. You've got your first one up here, which we'll see in a bit, and you can have a second one here, and these are all pretty useful. I must admit, I use them on my Helix all the time. You can have it either as an expression pedal or as momentary switches. You can have a Y cable, so you can have two switches there, 7 and an 8. Very useful indeed. What have we got next? Well, we've got an FX loop. We've got a return or auxiliary, which is in stereo, you can see, and a send that's in stereo. I guess that's if you want it to be in stereo. It's like everything else. It can be used as a mono or stereo FX loop for inserting external stomp boxes in your tone to connect your amp via 4-cable method. You know what that is? Well, we might cover it later on. I think I've got an image of a Helix, and it's pretty similar, really. The return can be globally set to act as an always-on stereo aux input. So you can see it there, it says aux stereo return. So you could actually put your backing music in there and play along. That sounds like a plan, especially when you're at home, doesn't it? Or maybe some guys when you're at gigs. We've got main out, we've got balanced and unbalanced, and we've got left mono or right or stereo if you use the two, which is pretty obvious really. You can connect these to powered speakers. When you connect to a single speaker, use this left mono. That's the usual trick, isn't it? That's what we normally do. You can use quarter TRS to XLR male cables to run balance signals to a mixing console, so you can go straight out of this into your mixer. Amp out. Now you've only got one amp out, and you connect your guitar amp's input there. Yeah, front of your amp. That's what it says. It echoes the main out signal, but it can be globally set to be tapped off directly before the cab IR block. So you wouldn't want, if you've already got an amp, yeah, and you're pulling it out to your into an amp and then through speakers, why would you want an IR? Well, you wouldn't. You wouldn't want a speaker simulation of any kind in that particular setup, because you'd be doing it twice, so to speak. Next one we've got is phones. This is all connect your headphones. You know how to do that, don't you? I'm sure you do. You turn the top panel volume to adjust the level of that, else it'll blow your head off. I think that's all I can say about that. Next one's the USB. Well, you can connect your computer for editing via POD GO, the POD GO Edit, which we're going to look at in a bit. And by the way, it does actually come with a USB cable, which some devices don't. This one does. And you can update the firmware through this as well, with the Line 6 update thing. POD GO functions as an audio and MIDI interface with reamping built in, so it does everything that you'd want it to do. What more can I say? Yeah, very good. Lastly, well, nearly lastly, we've got this DC input. Now they ramble on about using the Line 6 power and all the rest of it. Let me just get the power. Well, here it is. Now this is 1,000,000 times better than the HX effects that I had some while ago. I could have thrown it in the bin. This piece would keep breaking off and coming off and dropping off, and it's about this long. And it was, to be honest, it was useless. Anybody in the right mind who had the HX effects would have gone and bought another power supply. And here they are telling you, basically you can't use some other power supply, but yeah, you would. What's important about this one, let me have a look closely. It's 100 to 240 volts, so you could use it anywhere. It's the usual type of connector, but this one's at an angle. I like that. And it's a 9 volt 3 amp, 27 watt. So it's a 3 amp power supply, but importantly, the center core is negative. Center's negative on this one. So you could just buy a power supply no matter what they say. Negative center, and guess what? They're all exactly the same. And of course, lastly, we've got here, well, how hard is it to understand? It's called on or off, and that's the end of the back. Well, I hope the inside part and the outside of the hardware was interesting thus far. For me, I thought it was great. I like to have a look inside these things and see what I'm actually buying. You don't see many reviews where guys will actually do that. But one of the most important things about having a pedal like this, or indeed any other pedal, it doesn't matter which one it is, or any other piece of gear, is how long it's going to work for and whether it's going to fail or break down through rubbish inside it, or whether it's really well made, whether the components are good and all the rest of it. And I think it's so important. I always do this. What's the point of buying something like this, or even a £3,000 amp, and then 6 weeks later, while you're out on a gig, it just goes pop? Because some character put some junk inside it. And believe me, I've seen equipment well over £2,000 that has really, really big problems inside it. I've seen amps by a really well-known maker, and it isn't Marshall, I might add, a really well-known American maker that you would not sell to a dog. Trust me, I have the video if anybody wants to take me up on it, but yeah, you'd be doing a real big disservice to that particular maker. It'd shoot him down in flames somewhat. Anyway, back to this. So that's why we looked at the inside. From here on in, I'm afraid we're going to have a laptop or a PC or something to connect this to, because what we want to do is check the firmware first of all, and then download these presets of Jason Sudaitis. We'll pull a few in, run through the unit of how easy or how hard it is to use and the software. It's all great stuff. And then we'll go from there. To me, fabulous stuff. For 390 quid or £400. What a great piece of gear, right from the off. And you know, the top's metal. It's, yeah, it's all good. Oh, one last thing. Just before we go any further, I often talk about CE approvals and ROSH compliance and stuff like that. You know, all the legalities of having equipment like this being sold into your market or my market. And it meets the standards that it should. Well, you know what? I'm not even going to bother to look at this because I know, well, I've already looked at it, but I know that this is totally, completely compliant with the legislation for my area of the world, and it will be compliant for your area of the world too. So rest assured, these guys are really, really on the ball. Anyway, let's move on. I'm going to go get the laptop out and let's move forward that way. Hold on. Just as I'm setting this up, I just wanted to show you one thing that could be a problem for you. The actual cable here. Yeah, the cable here is about a metre long. 1 metre. Ha! How stupid is that? Okay, well, just before we do get down to things, I just did want to point out that you might want to print a manual. You can see how thick it is. It's about 100 pages between two manuals. There's a lot in there. And of course, if you're doing the sort of thing I do, I tend to want to know about everything rather than just the bits just to make it work by pressing a few buttons. We can all do that, but mastering the product might take you longer, especially if you don't print out a manual. So I can recommend that you do that without delay before we proceed. Now, one of the things I've done is I've downloaded the software and it's all on the PC here. That includes the Line6 updater and the POD GO edit, which is something I didn't have on there. But this is actually set up on version 1.12, so this is the latest firmware kicking around. So I won't be upgrading that and showing you how to do that because it's already done. That makes a bit of sense. So what I'm going to do first of all is come down and take a look at the hardware on the screen, you know, and just run through the basics of it. I don't want to go to the last nth degree literally on the hardware, but on the edit we might go a bit further. Just depends how it goes. But next up will be the hardware and its controls on the screen and that sort of thing. Don't know how well they come out. And then we'll be moving on to the actual edit, which is much better. And of course later on, Jason Sadites, some of his presets for the POD GO when we get to playing. So let's get down to it. Okay, well, here we are. The POD GO. This is not the one, by the way, that's got the wireless in it. You can buy a version that's got a wireless, so you can go wireless. I suppose you can POD GO wireless. Anyway, throughout this video, you can hear things like block, like model, like preset, IR. That's one. If you've not heard of that before, you might be saying to yourself, what the hell's he on about? But don't worry about it, it's all pretty straightforward. So blocks, basically, they're objects that represent various elements of your tone, such as amps, cabs, effects and so on. And you can see them across the top there. If I hit view, there they are. These are blocks. The model, well, there's the model for that particular amp. And we can choose different ones depending what we're trying to do. A preset is the tone. It consists of all blocks, parameter settings, snapshots, foot switch assignments and controller assignments. So they get stored, they do, all nice and easy. Send and return allows us to send out a signal, put it through something else and bring it back in. You've probably all heard of them. IRs are also called impulse responses, and these are relatively new to this type of product, you know, the emulators or simulators. They are mathematical functions and they represent the sonic measurements of audio systems. They're most often used for cab tones. POD GO can store up to 128 custom or third-party IRs, We move along a bit. There's a cab, and it will consist of lots of different things. We'll come back to that later. Well, let's go a bit further now and look at the hardware and the buttons and what they do. This is the main display. This is where you're going to see everything that's going on inside the unit. It's a colour LCD, and it's very nice actually. It's quite high res as well. You can see up in that corner you've got a camera with a number 1 in it, and we'll come back to that also a bit later. Now I've got here an action button, and this button, this opens the action panel for the selected block or menu. From the edit view, the action panel lets you move, copy and paste blocks around. Other menus may have different action panels. For example, the global settings action panel lets you reset the global settings at once. So it does different things depending where you are. Press this and the action together to basically to save a preset. For example, when I'm in this US amp, if we hit the action button, I can either copy the block, I can paste it if I've copied it then, or I can bypass any snapshot, and we'll talk about snapshots a bit later. Now you've got this upper knob here, and this upper knob basically, when you're in play view, which is this one, turn the knob to select a preset. We can choose them. You see them moving around. All nice and simple. Press the knob to open the preset list. In the edit view, turn this knob to select a block for editing. Press the knob by bypass enable selected blocks. So when we're in this view, if we hit that, we're now bypassing that block. All nice and simple. Press view to get back to where you started. Now you've got a lower knob here. Let's whip off into edit view and hit the bottom one. And we can see that we've got an amp and a preamp. You can see that there. And you can turn this knob to change all the different amps. Or with this one, sorry, then we can do the same with those. Got a volume knob, pretty obvious. Looks after the headphone volume as well as the main output. Now if you note here, we've got two little LEDs. One says volume expression 2 and the other one says wah expression 1. So we've got a wah and we've got a volume currently. If I was to flip across to the wah, you can see that it now lights up and gives you an indication here of what's going on. And if we flip it back, you'll also see that that moves itself back across to the volume. Now these knobs across the bottom are here. We can adjust the parameters accordingly. See that? All very nice and simple, and you can press it as well. Depending what mode you're in, it'll do different things, but I'm going to leave that as it is for now. There's nothing dynamic about that really. But there is another use for these knobs. If you've got one, for example, that's got speed on the unit that you're using, whatever it may be, you can flip across from the setting that it might be on at the minute and adjust it to quarter beat, half beat, and so on and so forth. Nice and easy to use again. Once you know that, it's done really. Now when you look at this wah pedal, or this expression pedal, I should call it the wah pedals, well, the alternative. But is it the alternative? Well, no, it isn't. You can actually use the expressions because you can have an external expression pedal. You can use them for lots of other things. For example, if you control volume or wah, that's fair enough. But you can also customize a combination of amp or effects parameters, activate a hidden toe switch, which is what I pressed earlier, to toggle between 1 and 2. And we've already covered the LEDs and the rest, but there's a lot you can do with this by way of programming. Now we've also got these switches down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these basically, they're just regular foot switches, but something I do want to tell you about these are not like the Helix switches. On a Helix, all you need to do is touch it. You can see on these are more regular switches that don't actually operate that way. But they basically, you can choose different presets, or go up and down a bank. I'll stay where I am for now. And that sort of thing. Now we've also got this mode switches down here. Now the mode switch, if we just press it, you'll see that what it's really doing is bringing up all of the parameters, you can see, for the various pedals, or should I say blocks, that are up the top there. And you can see it's turning them on and off nice and easy. And that'll take you back out to where we were. There's another, you can use that as an exit for something else, but I wouldn't worry about it for now. And the other obvious one that's down here is this tap and tuner. Now if you hit it a few times at a particular tap rate, it'll change the parameters of whatever it is you're trying to do, such as delay time, for example. But if you hold it down, you'll get a tuner on the screen, which you can see here. All very nice, and it saves you faffing around with them other things, doesn't it? You know, the ones that are inaccurate. This one seems to be pretty good. And you can change a load of stuff on this. You can change the bass, reference, frequency, how fine it is, that sort of thing, and whether you mute the output, and you know, all the niceties of things that often you can't do on some gear. Now, as you know, I did do a very quick run through round the back along the top up here, and I'm not really going to go and do that again, because well, most guys know what an in and an out is, and a guitar in, or a loop send or return, and that sort of thing. So it gets a little bit pointless, so I'll move on. Now, setting this thing up so you can use it with an amp or not isn't really that difficult. You've got some main outs, you've got a volume control here, and not much else. But if you want to send it to your amp rather than sending it to a desk from the outputs, well, really the best way to do that would be to use what they call a 4-cable method. Now, it can be confusing to a lot of guys, you know, they've never done this stuff before, and all you out there that know how to do it, that's fine, but remember, this video is for everyone, not just for the experts. So on screen now is a simple diagram of a 4-cable method. It's very popular, and it's a flexible way of hooking things up, allowing you to route some effect blocks, most often drives, distortion, wah and compressors, before your real amps, preamp and other effects blocks, often time-based effects like delays and reverbs in its effects loop. That's how it works. And in the manual here it says pop quiz, how many cables should be used in a 4-cable method setup? Go on, have a guess. Yeah, it's 4. So back to the non-4-cable method, connect the amp out to the amp in, and on the 4-cable method do what you just saw in that diagram. And if you want to connect it to a desk, well, you can do that too. Now, connecting it to your desk, you might want to use the USB off into a PC and then record into your DAW that way. But you might not. There are lots of reasons why you might not want to do that. You could take the main outs and feed them into the desk as opposed to taking the USB route. It's all down to what you want and what you get on with. Now, if anybody's seen my review on the GT1000 Core, much smaller unit, you don't got really many pedals and much of anything else, so the control's quite difficult on that. This is great if you just want to plug in and go, I think. But there are some shortcomings on this unit, and before we go much further, because when we get further down the road you're going to see them anyway. Actually, I think I will just cover a little bit about across this stuff a bit more. What you've got is if you can see this, you'll see it later when we get to edit. You've got an input, you've got the wah, you've got the volume pedal. This one here that's faded out is basically an FX loop, so that's where you send and return the FX loop. So you could put a device or a number of devices in that FX loop. We move along to the next one. This one is currently set up for dynamics, red squeeze, whatever it may be, and I think it's turned off. Yeah, now it's turned on. But we can choose different pedals for this, but what we can't do is choose different parameters for certain other ones, which I'll get to. Let's carry on along. The next one along, you can do the same. We can come to this one and we can choose different pedals. There's a list of them, I'll get to them in a minute. Then we've got the amp. Well, you've got the amp and the amp's staying. You can choose different amps, but it's staying there for good. The one after that you can choose. The speaker you can't choose, it sits there. You can turn it on or off, but it's don't get me wrong, it's not that you can't choose it, it's that you can't lose it from this list. That's the easiest way. Then we've got the next one. This is one you can choose. And then we've got the last one, which is a preset IQ. And again, you can whip along to that. And we could turn it on or off. We could go to different EQs, but it's always going to be an EQ. And that's the point. That's the thing about it. And then, of course, we've got the output. Now, if you look at the spaces that I talked about, we've got choices of up to 4 additional effects blocks anywhere. And when I say anywhere, I mean in these spaces. Because we covered 4 that weren't particularly used. Well, they are used, but they turned off. The choices are distortion, dynamics, EQ, modulation, delay, reverb, pitch or synth, filter and looper. So we've got a fair array of stuff, but listen, this pales into insignificance in comparison with a helix. So do not assume that it's a helix. It's not a helix up here, it's not a helix in the editor, it's not a helix in the I/O, and it's not a helix even in the build quality. This has got bits of plastic and things. Now I could carry on doing more on this review in this section about the hardware, and you know what? I'm not going to really do it because we can do most, if not everything, from the editor. And the obvious thing to do is to go and have a look at the editor and show it you're in there, because it's much easier to do than faffing around on this. And on this, we've only got this tiny little screen, and the editor will be full screen. I think it's a plan that we should go and have a look at that next. But there is one last thing, really, that I do want to cover, and it relates to snapshots. I mean, most people have seen pedals and things like that, but snapshots might be an unusual feature that you've never heard of. And I know in a helix you can have 8 snapshots per preset. We'll call them a preset. There's a preset, there's another preset. So you could have 8 in that one, 8 in that one, 8 in that. So however many presets, you times it by 8, and that's how many snapshots you've got within the unit, but not on this one. Okay, well there's the preset, as we said. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So we've got 4 snapshots. But in total, for any given preset, we can have up to 64 different parameters assigned to snapshots. But it's 64 in total, and that's the important thing for this particular preset. And yeah, that's a lot, isn't it? So in effect, if you think of these, really, they're almost like groups. So you've got 4 separate groups where we can have these stored parameters assigned, and that can change. Every one of these can change this particular preset dramatically. You could turn off and on any or all, almost all, of the pedals, for example, or you could assign this to something or assign this pedal to something. It's endless. We'll get to see it later. So the snapshots are a really powerful aspect that you don't want to ignore, especially when you use this thing live and things like that. So what could you actually store? Well, you could store in any one of these things. You could bypass or any of the blocks except a looper. You could take a parameter, any parameter, the values of a parameter assigned to the controller via up to 64 per preset, including the snapshot controller. So that's a lot that you can control. The tempo, you can also change the system tempo. Tempo select is set to per snapshot, but by default it's actually set to per preset, so you can change that in your global settings. Depending on how you configure them, snapshots can act as 4 variations of the same tone, 4 drastically different tones, or any combination thereof, all within the same preset. In many cases, a single preset snapshot may accommodate all of the various tones required for a song. Yeah. If you're trying to think of a use for a snapshot, you might actually say, well, this is a verse, this is a chorus, this is a middle eight, this is that, and so on and so forth. You can use them like that, for example. That'd be quite clever. You could also use them for turn any delay, reverb and or FX loops, box, trails parameter on or off, as another example. If you're worried that further tweaking might make your tone worse, not better, snapshots are a great way to compare minor changes between tones without having to take your hands off the guitar, if you think about that. We can set different keys in harmony, delay blocks or intervals and pitch blocks per snapshot. That's another interesting aspect. You know, it's quite a powerful little device, isn't it? If you're having difficulty maintaining consistent volume throughout a song, set one of the effects, gains or level parameters per snapshot. You can exclude a block's bypass from being affected by snapshots by setting its snapshot bypass to off, while in edit view, select the block and press action. Alternatively, you can change snapshots via USB MIDI. If you look in the MIDI section, which I'm not really going to cover in this, there's little you can't control. Okay, well, I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight into the physical hardware type of stuff without going into any great depth, because I could literally be here all day, and so could you. We don't want to do that. So the next thing I'm going to do is look at the POD GO edit, which isn't dissimilar to the Helix edit, and you know, look at things moving forward in that way, because you can do most stuff from there as opposed to faffing around on this. This is great if you're at a gig or something like that, and scarily you've got no means of doing anything except from this. Well, you can basically do near enough everything from there, but it's not the answer. I'm going to get on with the Go edit now. Okay, well, here we go. I've got the POD GO edit software there, and the POD GO's plugged into the machine by USB, and if we click that pretty presently, better luck, it's going to open up, as you can see. There it is. It's set up as default. I haven't done a bean with it other than to load it up onto the PC. Yeah, it's supported by Macintosh as well, so it's all fun, that is. So let's have a look at this sort of panel that we've got in here for a bit of an overview. Well, where do we start? We could start anywhere in this. There's loads of stuff. But let's start in the easiest places. What we've got is a librarian panel, which is this one down here. This is for factory or user. You see there's no user ones. And we've got impulses, and there's no impulses either. So we'll stick with factory for now. That manages presets, set lists, impulses, the responses and files and stuff like that. So plenty to go at there. Signal flow panel basically is this one. This is where it goes. It comes in here and it goes out there, and there might be an in and out in the middle. We'll come back to that. And then we've got another panel called the inspector panel, which is this one here. So if we were to choose a device, simply, you can see that the parameters change for that specific device, all nice and simple. Another thing I like about this is that you can actually resize the screen to almost anything you want, and it hasn't always been like that on some applications. I remember some rolling stuff, absolutely awful. There you go. So let's take a look at these menus across the top. We've got obvious stuff like file. We can save a preset. We can import presets and export presets. Import set lists or export set lists. Create a backup. Restore from backup. And there are various preferences. Under edit, we can undo set parameters. We can copy, cut and all the usual stuff that you'd expect. We've got that snapshot section where you can see on this, there's only actually the 4 snapshots we talked about. Then we've got window, we can show a bypass and control or global EQ. And then we've got a help section about POD GO edit, the application pilot's guide. I usually crash and burn myself, I don't know about you, but that's life. And then we've got the help. So one of the first things you do want to do when you get in here, and just trust me on this, I'm speaking from practical experience, is to go here and create a backup. Okay, there's the backup. It puts the time and date in. It puts it wherever it's going to put it. I don't really care at the moment where it does that, but I'm going to say first backup battery. The reason I've done that, you can see it doing it now and it's finished. And the reason's very simple, because if you screw up a pile of stuff, especially in these early days when you're first looking at this thing, what happens? I can tell you what happens. It's all very simple. You have to do a factory reset and start from beginning again. It's not a good idea. And I have had some devices over the years where when you do a factory reset, you don't get the presets back. Oh, don't go there. This could be one of them, but I'm not even going to try it. Crazy stuff. Really crazy stuff. Yeah, so like I said, you can get yourself in a TizWaz, and bear in mind that even these factory presets here, they're all editable, and it can get you in a bit of a TizWaz. The point is, I'm not going to go to the nth degree on anything. I never do with this stuff. I mean, it's okay. It's pretty cool to work with, but you soon get to grips with it. Let's have a look anyway across here. This is an important area. This is all your sort of pedals and the rest. You can see this one's on at the minute. And if I was to switch it, you'll see this one appear, because it all does happen, believe it or not, in real time like that. Let me switch it back again. Yeah, so everything's in real time. Whatever's going on here is going on in the screen, in the unit itself. Let's take a look at this. Let's just click on here. This is the input, so we can choose between an input from USB 3 and 4 or from guitar. I'm going to leave it as it is for now, and you can put an input gate in there. You can see it down here. Oh, very nice. If we look at the expression, well, this is a wah, a facile wah. If I hit that, I can have a look at the wah pedals. And what I like about this one is you're not faffing around going down a list like a lot of stuff. A lot of different products are like that. With this one, you've got little pictures of everything, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm not going to go and choose one because there's absolutely no point. But when you have chosen one, you've got your parameters here, and there's a lot of them. The position it's in. Oh, if I move it, if it was in what? Let's go to what? Okay, now I'm in wah, and you'll see that as I move it, you get this move. So the controls in real time. Foot control low, foot control high, the mix is on 100%, and the level of the wah. So it's all very nice, isn't it? The only thing is, you're not going to be moving this. You can move it around, don't get me wrong, like so. But you can't get rid of it, and that's the thing. And that's an important, very important aspect to remember when you're looking at this. We've got that expression pedal, which is it's a volume pedal at the moment. But it can control panning, gain, stereo width, that sort of thing. And we could just very easily choose it. I'll stick with what I had start off with. And there's its position. Let's carry on along. Right, this is a send and return. And it's currently set up to mono FX loop. So if we look at that, we can have a stereo FX loop. And bear in mind, you've got to get the cables right. Have a look in your manual for that. Can't use mono cables on a stereo in and out. This will be what we've got at the moment. We click it. We've got send level, return level, and the mix. Anyway, you get the idea. This is one that we could, again, we can move it around like so, and you can choose any one of lots of types of pedal. If you can see straight away, when we choose one of these as opposed to choosing one of those, when you choose this, you've only got EQs. When you choose one of these that's sort of ghosted out, you can choose any one of these. So it's a whole different ball game than what you might think, and it's certainly very different than the real Helix. I haven't tried the smaller unit, the one above this one, but I don't really intend to, because I don't like that one personally. It's not something I get on with too much if there are no real controls. Yeah, but on this one, that's where it's at. It's turned off. We can have it turned on. It was set for dynamics, and there's the controls for the dynamics. We flip across to modulation. Now we can go into all this lot. I mean, there really is a lot of stuff as we whip through these choices. You can see it. That's one of the things I really like about this. There's so much you can do when we turn it back off. You can say X, but it doesn't go away. Let's have a look at the amp. That's an interesting one. Look at all this stuff. Oh my God, how many amps do you want? And don't forget, we can load in that other stuff from Jason Sudeikis. I think that's his proper name. Doesn't matter if it isn't, but that's what I'm going to call him. And yeah, oh my God, look at the amps. Look at the amps. Now we've got a different amp, Matchstick Channel 2. Well, we all know what that is, don't we? You could also change the preamp, which is a bit weird. So you could have power amp that's a US Deluxe NRM, or you could flip the preamp into, I don't know, an Interstate Z, which is a bit weird. I think we'll leave it where it is for now. But you get the idea, don't you? How simple all this is. Okay, so let's import a preset. There's one I did earlier. It should work. And there it is. It's got a little pick at the side, and that shows you that it's a sort of premium marketplace preset. Yeah, this is a Jason Sudeikis one, and there it is, all raring to go. Yeah. So there's the amp, there's Jason's settings, and it all looks good. So we could go and do that with other stuff. I've got some more that we could pull in for later. Well, I've got another one I can import, and I think we'll start it at about 5A. Why not? File, import. Let's go back up from there. We've got this British POD GO preset pack. Theory is I should be able to pull one of these in. JCM 800 sounds like a plan, that one does. Let's do that. Remember, you've got to be logged in, otherwise it's just trouble. There it is. I'll pull a few in. So we've got a number of them loaded in there now, and what I'm just going to do, just again, is to I'm going to make a backup. Could be a plan. Okay, let's import an IR. Got one here somewhere. We'll just use that one and that one. Doesn't really matter which. I could pull a pile in, I guess. Looks like we can. Okay, well there's a few we've pulled in earlier. Okay, well let's take a quick look at the snapshot section there. You can see we've got 4 snapshots, and it happens to be on number 4 at the moment. So if we were to click there, we could whip on the others. Whip to the others, shall I say. You can see various things moving around. That moved to down there. Back to there. We've got things going on and off. So it's all nicely controllable. Snapshot 1. Just another way of being able to do it. So what you can do is turn on and off, set up what you want, and it's all good. And it's all nice and, well, it's relatively easy. We can copy snapshots too if we want to put them in other places and save them and usual rubbish. We've got a global EQ, all adjustable, all nice, and remember it is global, so it's going to affect absolutely everything. Some parameters down here you can twiddle with if you really want to. I don't, but you can see it's there. You can turn it on and off. And I'm just going to kill that one. Another nice little feature is these undo and redo. And anything in the editing section, it will happily do all day. You can see it's whipping around, doing its thing. It's all nice and simple. We've also got a little thing up the top here, which relates to tap tempo. And if we click this down, we can have it per snapshot, per preset, or global. So nice and easy to adjust. I'm not going to adjust it, of course, because, well, there's no point, is there? But you get the idea. Now, I also want to cover a little bit some of the pedals and things that are in here. I mean, there's a real lot of them. As I said, what I like are the graphics. They're all nice, and you know exactly what that is, and you know exactly what, well, you know what they are. That's the thing. It's not these stupid, well, they actually do have the stupid names if you go and look. Now let's give you a clue of some of the names that are in here, what they're based on, should I say, not what they are. Yeah, we've got Kinky Boost, which is an exotic EP booster. It says Deranged Master, Dallas Range Master treble booster. Minotaur, well, we know that's a Quan Centaur. Tima, Paul Cochrane, Timmy Overdrive. More timid than Timmy. Heir Apparent, Analog Man, Prince of Tone. A Placa Rogue, Way Huge, Red Llama, modded. Compulsive Drive, Full Tone OCD. And the list goes on and on. But I'm not going to name their stuff. I'm going to name the ones that they're supposed to be simulating, like the Full Tone OCD, Hermida Zen Drive, Chandler Tube Driver, Dodd OD25, Ibanez TS808 Tube Screamer, Max on SD9, Boss SD1 Overdrive, a Bandrakian Cologne Walled Bunny Distortion. I've never heard of that one. Orbiter Fuzz Face, Electro Harmix, Big Muff Pie, ZVEX Fuzz Factory, Tycho Brahe Octavia. Oh, they have some names for this stuff, don't they? Garage is modded, Garbage is modded, Boss FZ2, Line 6 Original, Sub Decay Harmonic Antagonizer, Megaphone. Well, that's just, and it carries on, and that's just the distortion models. When we come down to dynamics, we're then on Line 6 Original, MXR, Dynacomp, Exotic SP Compressor, Ashley CLX52, Teletronics LA28, Line 6, Line 6, Line 6, Teletronics LA2A, MXR Dynacomp, Boss CS1, and on we go. Then we move on to EQs. We've got lots of, at least 5 or 6 Line 6 originals. Then the MXR 10 band and the Mesa Boogie Mark 4 graphic EQ, of all things. Huh, what can you say? And then we move on to modulation models, which is these here. I'll read a few out. Fender Optical Tremolo, Vox AC15, Boss PN2, Line 6 Original, Lightfoot Labs Goatkeeper, nah. MXR Phase 90, Electro Armex, Shinai Univibe, well, that'll be worth looking at. Where's that one? It'll be in here somewhere. Yeah, it's there, look. Yeah, fancy that. Line 6 original MXR 117 flanger, ADA flanger and more. Let's move down a bit. The modulation models go on for at least another page. Then we come to delay models. I mean, there's thousands of them. I've got 8 Line 6 originals, TC Electronic 2290, 4 more Line 6 originals, Maestro Echoplex, another Line 6, Boss DM2 with Adrian mod, and so on and so forth. Reverb models, all Line 6 by the look of them. Yeah. Give or take, there's few at the front, which don't seem to be on mine. Or do they? No, they don't. Then we go on to pitch shift. Digitech Whammy, Eventide 3000, 4 Line 6s, EBS Octabase, Eventide H3000 again, Line 6 original, Korg X911 guitar synth, and more filter models. Coming down to the end of it now, thank God for that. Musitronics Mutron 3, Korg A3, Line 6 original, Muga Fuga, MF105. I might even put some of these on the screen, you know, that you might have seen. ZVEX Sequoia, Oberheim voltage controlled S&H filter, Musitronics Mutron, and more. What we got left? A Looper. Wow. Looper models, all Line 6 originals, it says here. So them are dummies. Yeah. Well, I can tell you where you go. You go to amps. And I've got page after page of amps. High Watt DR103, Supro S6616, Gibson EH185, Victoria Vintage Queen, Fender Bassman, Fender 5C3, 3 of them, Grammatico, Lagrange, 3 of them, Fender Champ, loads of Fender amps, Vox amps, Dr. Z amps, Matchless amps, Orange, Marshalls, everyone you could think about almost, Friedman's. Some ideas of these: 1 times 6x9 Supro, 1 8-inch Fender Champ. We've got Fender, Gibson, Grammatico again, Vox, Bogner, Mesa Boogie, Fender again, Silvertone, Dr. Z, Roland, Matchless, High Watt, Orange, Marshall, Park, Bogner, Mesa, Soldano, Sun. It's an endless list. We move on to microphones, and some of the mics are Shure SM57, Sennheiser MD409, Heel Sound, Electro Voices, Royer R121, Bayer Dynamic, AKG C414, TL2, Nyman's, AKG D112, AKG D12, Shure SM7. Now there is another thing I can talk about, but I can't really show it to you because, well, I could be here forever. But it covers keyboard shortcuts. And the thing is, when you're in this editor, there is, I'll tell you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages of shortcuts that you could use on your keyboard. Great if you're using it all the time, but I think it's a bit of an overkill personally. I don't know, what do you think? Put it down in the text below, because 9 pages of shortcuts is, well, it's actually got more shortcuts than my door has. It's crazy. Now I could go on and on and on all day about this stuff. I mean, there's just so much of it, as there always is. Still got my user presets, so that will be interesting later. And I've got my IRs that we pulled in earlier, so all that's still there. Loads of stuff to go at. I'm not going to mess around with it any longer because I'm getting bored. I can't plug it in and out here, so that's not going to happen either. But you can see it's a very extensive product for what it is. Bear in mind that this pedal costs about £400. So I hope it's given you a little bit of an insight into the thousands of things that you can do. I'm not going to sit here doing them. It's just, Honestly, you'd be here for, well, forever. Look at all these things you can, choose one. Oh my God. You just can be here forever. No real point in doing that. Anyway, that's it for now. And you'll be hearing some of these user ones from Jason Sudeikis. And by the way, I did buy every one of them. Nobody gives me anything. And you might get to hear some of these impulses, which were free downloads from a guy somewhere in France. Well, there you are. It's a very quick overview of the software, and you can't sit here all day. I mean, the video would be 10 hours long. But if you've never been into one before, or you've never really seen one like this with all the graphics in there, it does actually help quite a lot once you get down to it. So yeah, it could all turn out to be quite nice for you, particularly if it's your first pedal of this sort of ilk. What couldn't you do with it? Well, very little. I think it does have its limits with its I/O. I think that's one of the major problems of it. It's a bit like the GT1000 core. That had its limits too, particularly with the I/O and the control and the rest of it. Now there is MIDI on this, and there's MIDI on the other one as well, the core, but the core's like £600. The advantages of things like the core is it can have 24, I think it's 24 separate items in its flow. And this one's got, well, about 12. And of the 12, well, 8 of them are what they are. You can choose different models of them, but 8 of them are what they are, as I showed. And only 4 of them can be sort of selected from, well, a pile of, yeah, you saw it earlier. It's a limitation. I'm not really that concerned myself. For its £400, it's pretty awesome, to tell you the truth. Yeah, I always love the thing about these, when you just twizzle something, it all updates on screen. It's pretty spectacular, really. Yeah. Oh. How good's that? German Ubersonic. Now you've got your choices. And there they are. Loads and loads of amps. So what about summing up with this thing, Well, I didn't check the warranty on this one. I think it might only be 1 year. It could be longer. I didn't check. Yeah, so I checked. 12 months parts and labour. So you basically get a year. Well, what do you expect for your 400 quid? Or $530, give or take. So overall, an interesting little product. What did I like? Well, I like the controls. I like the software, strangely enough. I don't like 1 year warranty, it's a bit meagre. I like the coloured screen. That's a really, really high resolution coloured screen. Very nice, especially for this sort of money. The next nearest one I've seen like that is on that GT1000 core. Very similar. Maybe, yeah, sort of similar. I like the metal top. I don't mind the plastic bottom. I don't mind the I/O either. You can have too much of that stuff. You can have too little, but for what you're paying here and its intended use, it's a pretty good device. What don't I like? Well, I used to not like the power supply, but they've improved it, so I can't gripe about that one. But it used to be terrible, and if you've got one of them HX effects, I think they were called, oh my God, never mind. Go and buy yourself a power supply. What else don't I like about it? I don't like having to print the manuals out, and you have to do it on most things these days. Now, you could argue with me, well, don't print them out. Well, okay. Then you'll be thumbing through that screen on there for the next 10 years like you're an AXFX user. You don't want to do that, do you? No, of course you don't. Print the manual out and it all becomes easier. At least on this one it does. Yeah. Do I like the sounds of it? It doesn't sound actually too bad. No, it doesn't. And I think one of the things with these type of devices, they all claim that they sound so different, and every user that you'll ever talk to says his is the best. So if I was an Axe FX guy, mine's the best. If I was a Helix guy, mine's the best. If I was a Pod Go guy, mine's the best. It doesn't matter what brand. If I was a Kemper guy, mine's the best. But are any of them the best? I think not. Again, if you go to have a look at Jason Sudeikis, you'll see that he did a comparison where you couldn't really pin down what was what. And yeah, it was about a 50-50 ratio of trying to guess what was what. That says a lot, doesn't it? Yeah, and I believe him too. These devices often sound very similar. They're not exactly the same, but they're very similar. And pay your money, take your choice, off you go. I'd be very wary with that. But there again, for little money extra than what this costs, you have a real tube amp. And if you used to look around the second-hand market, I mean, you could get one of those PRS Tremonti amps for, what, 400 quid or less? Same price as this. You could have a speaker on it, but, well, it's not everything, is it? You must have some speakers. So enough's enough of this one. I'm getting a bit bored with it now. I've pressed every button, often off screen as well. Every button you can press, and after a while, it's just another button press. So, how would I give it a score? Well, I hate to say this, but I'd give this one about an 8. I think it's pretty good for its money, you know, and what you get, and you can throw this thing around, matey. It's all metal. It's really good. Yeah, I don't like the fact that you can't do the Helix thing on it and one or two things like that, but what do you want for your money? Tell me. So the plane's going to be coming up anytime soon. Hope you haven't been too bored with this section. It does get a bit boring, I have to admit. I'm trying to show you what I can, but you really can't easily do it. It just isn't worth the time. So don't forget to visit www.TonyMcKenzie.com, where there's loads of written reviews, and there's some videos too, but they're always on YouTube as well. So you could go to my YouTube channel, which has got more than 350 videos on there right now, and you might enjoy it, you might not. Okay, that's it for now. The audio's coming up next, however that comes out, who knows, till you plug it in and have a go. And I'll see you next time. Yeah, put down in the comments if you like it, or, you know, anything that you don't like about this that I didn't find. There must be 1,000 things, or at least I didn't tell you about them. Nah. Now get out of here. Okay, well, we're going to run through a few of the presets on the Pod Go and see where we end up. This one's 01A, US Deluxe, normal. What more can I ask for? Here he is. You get the idea, and that's just in its sort of standard run-of-the-mill mode. So I think we'll just whiz off to a few of the others. I think the next one we'll go to is Cali Rectifier. Why not? That's what I say. It's going to be different, of course. As I said, rather different. Let's carry on up the chain. I've got an SXA30 here, for what that's worth. I don't know. Don't use them myself. To be, or not to be. carry on. A Rev Gen Red, that sounds like a plan. There it is. And some of the things are turned on and some of the things are turned off, so we'll kick her at that. Here it is. I guess it's not bad really. Yeah, but it depends what you want, doesn't it? Let's see what else we've got in here. We've got a Brit J45, whatever that may be. Let's have a look. No boost on it, it's got an LA Studio comp on, odds and bits and pieces. Well, I don't know. I'm not that impressed with that bit. No. Let's see what else we've got. Archetype lead, it says. Doesn't sound too bad. Let's see if we've got anything else we can add to it. So if we turn the kinky boost off, what's it like then? You get the idea. Now I'm tending to choose these, to be honest, randomly. Yeah, what can you say? Let's see what else we got in here. I've got a screamer there, we could whip that one up. It's not really my sort of kettle of fish, is that one? Well, there you go. Let's see what else we've got. Super Lead 100 Pod Go. What else we got then? Super Lead Pod Go. I've got one here that says Still of the Snake. Okay, Still of the Snake. I can't play any of that, but you're listening to the tones. doesn't sound too bad here. Who knows what it'll be like at your end, but there you go. Still of the snake.